You know what's a shame about our podcast, Lewis?
How long do you have?
Is that no one gets to hear on the podcast the jazzy number that's provided with the stream.
Yeah, it's the best part of the podcast. In that way, our intro is like podcast jazz. The notes you don't hear are what really makes it sing.
It reminds me of like a old David Jones ad or something like that. I'm ready to pay good money for expensive haute couture.
Yeah, and I can talk about it all day, and it's infuriating for the audience because they have no context.
All right. First of all, Lewis, I want to thank our new Patreon supporters. We have got so many this week. I don't know how it happened. I don't know. Maybe it was the top quality guests of last week, Amy Ramikis and Leslie Hughes and Adam Zwar. We should book them again because the following people have signed up as fearmongers and frightmongers: Ben Ford, Con, Aaron Cook, Cameron Ong, Oliver C., Cheryl Parker, and Kate Plastow. Thank you so much. It's really amazing. 7, Lewis. This is the biggest week we've ever had.
It's incredible. It's almost like they were like Scott Morrison was offering 50% discounts on every Patreon to Rational Fear.
We are losing our main source of revenue in July. That is the Birth of Fat Fellowship that I'm on. So hopefully we can boost this over the next little bit and boost it up so we have a bit more revenue to head into the Australian election. I've also got one more announcement, Lewis, before we start the show. We're doing a Melbourne International Comedy Festival show Sunday, the 11th of April, 8:30 p.m. at the Melbourne Town Hall. Gabby Bold is on, Alice Fraser is on, James Colley is on, Sammy Shah is on, and some guy called Lewis Hobba is also on. Amazing.
Again, I love these intros for working out my schedule.
Yeah, make sure you pencil that date in. We're going to need
thanks, Dan.
in Melbourne. Links to tickets are in the show notes. I'm recording my end of Irrational Fear on Gadigal land in your nation. Sovereignty was never ceded. We need a treaty. Let's start the show. Tonight, Dan Andrews is in hospital after trying too hard to prove he has a spine, while federal Labor backbenchers are keen to emphasise that this is not the leadership spill they were looking for. And fresh concerns as to the ramification of Harry and Meghan's Oprah Winfrey interview on the health of Prince Philip, with many in the UK media asking, if a 99-year-old man dies, how and why is it Meghan Markle's fault? And this week marks the first anniversary of the JobKeeper announcement. The major milestone also marks nearly 12 months since Prime Minister Scott Morrison did something. It's the 12th of March, 2021, and the Melbourne Comedy Festival is only 1 month away. This is Irrational Fear. Welcome to Irrational Fear. I'm your host, Dan Ilic, former presenter of Good Morning Britain, and this is Irrational Fear, the podcast that takes the scariest stories and helps us laugh it in their face. In other words, it's kind of therapy for people who read Twitter. Let's meet our fearmongers for tonight. Her TV pilot, Why You Like This, had one of the best semen jokes I've ever witnessed on television, which made me think this is never, ever going to get up on television. From the Netflix series Why You Like This, it's Naomi Higgins.
Thank you so much for having me.
Why You Like This is such a great show, and it's
thank you.
You have enormous success with it.
Thank you, Dan. Yes, available on ABC iView right now for anyone listening. How lucky are you?
And he's one part of the drive team from Triple J's Hobba and Hing. He's here because he's not allowed to promote his own comedy festival show on his own national radio program. It's unroutable. Michael Hing.
Hello, everybody. Thank you. The ABC continues to be a dictatorial regime, an albatross around my neck, thwarting my success at every opportunity.
Oh, yeah, they've really left you living in squalor, haven't they, Hing?
I mean, you can see the room. For the people who can't see the video link, I am currently recording this from my sister's childhood bedroom. So,
yeah, it is important to remember that Michael Hing is the only national drive time radio host who lives with his parents.
And our last guest is performing at the Melbourne International Comedy Festival at the Melbourne Town Hall at 8:30 p.m. on Sunday, the 11th of April, in a live version of the award-winning comedy podcast Irrational Fear. It's Lewis Hobba.
Hello, Dan. Yes, and also, like Michael Hing, the ABC has stopped me from promoting this podcast live. Obviously, the other thing that stopped me was I just found out about it a minute ago, but it's those two things.
Coming up, we speak with national treasure Carl Kruszelnicki. He's got a new book about climate change. We'll ask him how many copies do we have to burn to meet our targets for the Paris Agreement. But first, here's a message from this week's sponsor.
The federal government is giving away 800,000 half-price plane tickets to anywhere in Australia that is marginal electorate. There's never been a better time to see the 7 swinging wonders of Australia. Walk through the colossal women's rugby union change rooms of Redcliffe, Queensland. It's huge. Or hike through the poisoned wasteland where the hanging native grasslands of Jamland once grew. Or fly to secluded Kangaroo Island to stay in your own private shack to experience how the emperors of the Great Pyramid scheme of Paladin once lived. Swinging by Swing Seats has never been this cheap. All you have to do is just sell a little tiny part of your soul. If you book through Hello World, use the offer code, one word, all lowercase, I know Matthias Cormann, and you'll get a surprise discount you'll have no idea about.
Obviously, free travel.
There's nothing marginal about the 7 swinging wonders of Australia. Do pack a jacket, because anywhere you go, it's gonna be bell weather.
Yes, the federal government is giving away 800,000 half-price plane tickets to anywhere in Australia. That's pretty wild, I think. Hang on. As we heard from this week's sponsor, it's a travel bonanza going on. The federal government is giving away 800,000 half-price tickets on certain plane routes around the country. Qantas CEO Alan Joyce calls it targeted support. I'm sure that's also the code name that ScoMo gave it behind the scenes, because it is so targeted. Those routes are targeted at swinging voters in marginal electorates, whereas the hardest hit tourism sectors like Sydney aren't seeing any of these tickets as part of this scheme whatsoever. You can book a ticket to the bellwether electorate of Eden Monaro, however, which of course has the wonderful Mount Kosciuszko. It's also got the ruins of the burnt out houses of people who have yet to receive federal funding to rebuild after last year's Black Summer bushfires. You can see all the sites of Eden Monaro. It's amazing. Fearmongers, what marginal electorates are you most looking forward to visiting this year?
Well, I mean, I did see that thrilling for me. I'm sure all of our guests can name the marginal electorates off the top of their head and put them in order of funniest to least funny. But I'll jump in quickly and just say that there is they are going to Avalon Airport, which is right near Geelong. So even though I do think this is a politicised nightmare, it is handy for me to go and visit my parents.
And in that way, has Scott Morrison bought your vote, Lewis?
I can't talk about that, Michael, for the same reason we can't talk about our show on our show.
Can I say, looking at this list of theoretically tourist destinations, they are not all, I would say, equal tourist destinations. Obviously, one is the Gold Coast, the most touristy place in the entire country. Other places, though, slightly less touristy. Obviously, Avalon amongst those.
How dare you? How dare you? It's exactly halfway between Melbourne and Geelong. It's the Canberra of Victoria. It's a beautiful town.
Yeah. It's got an airport.
Yep.
It's got the entrance road to the airport, and there's even an exit road as well. It's amazing down there.
Got it all.
As someone who lives in Victoria, can I ask an Avalon specific question? Is there a Hollywood on the Gold Coast in Avalon? Is that a thing that exists? Because there's one on the Gold Coast. There's a Hollywood on the Gold Coast on the Gold Coast.
There's an Avalon in Sydney, so Avalon is the Avalon of Victoria.
Look, I'm willing to say that Avalon is where John Travolta flies his planes to. You can put that on the record. I don't know that. I don't know if that's a fact at all. He can fly planes, right? So let's say yeah.
90% of people who go to Avalon just didn't check their tickets when they bought flights to Tullamarine.
Absolutely.
So in that way, every flight to Avalon is a mystery flight.
This is exactly the point. This is why you have to double check every ticket you buy to Melbourne so you don't end up in Avalon.
Yeah, you're like, oh, that's a great price. Oh, I have to go to Avalon Airport? I'll pay the $700 more. Thank you.
and when Jetstar were first starting, a ticket to Avalon kind of sounded nice because in Sydney, we have an Avalon. It's quite nice. But the Avalon in Victoria is slightly different.
Yeah, no, my only memory of going to Avalon is going with my best friend in high school to see off her Finnish exchange student boyfriend and her just standing there crying for an hour. And that's about as much fun as anyone has in Avalon, I think.
For a moment there, I thought you said she was going to finish off her boyfriend at Avalon. If you're going to bury someone, that is the best place to bury someone in a chalet.
No one's going to know.
Does raise a good question, good point there, Michael. I think rather than giving out free tickets to every marginal electorate, they should give every marginal electorate a Hollywood on the Gold Coast.
I mean, obviously, that would certainly win my vote. I'll say here right now, you build a theme park in my local electorate, I'll vote for whichever party is building more roller coasters in Hurstville.
Not to mention, as a jobs creator, that means every marginal electorate gets to elect one fat guy to work as Batman.
Of course.
That's job creation.
That's it.
Yes.
Finally, my drama degree is going to come in handy. This week's second fear. The great apes in zoos around the United States are receiving their COVID-19 vaccines. An orangutan in San Diego Zoo was the first to get a COVID-19 vaccine. Now, back in 1994, she was also the first great ape to get open heart surgery. And get this, there's probably a reason why she was first. Her name is Karen. Just around San Diego Zoo. Could have used her giant arms to climb to the top of waiting lists, but no, she complained her way. Hing, does it worry you that these great apes are getting the jab before you?
Well, it initially did because I was like, hang on. Let's just be, in terms of job creation, I'm making many more jobs than any of these great apes. But then I found out there is only like 8,000 of them left. I thought, all right, fair enough. There's plenty more comedians. We can lose a few. And then, as I was reading up more about it, they're not getting the regular vaccine that we're all getting. They're getting a special ape vaccine. They're getting a gorilla vaccine, like a primate-specific vaccine that we're not allowed to have. But of course, as soon as I found out that there was a gorilla vaccine, Dan, that's the one I want. I want the gorilla vaccine. Put the AstraZeneca one back in the box. Give me the King Kong vaccine.
Kind of like ketamine is for horses.
Yeah, exactly. I imagine similarly in the way that ketamine is able to put horses to sleep. This gorilla vaccine will, give me gorilla-like qualities, be able to swing from trees, etc., etc. Speak with Tarzan, all the things I've always wanted to do.
Hey, buddy, you want some G? I got some G for you.
It feels like, for anyone who thinks of Planet of the Apes as a documentary, this feels like the place where it starts. This feels like the crossover point where a couple of people desperate for the vaccine, Michael Hing, etc., start doing kind of raids. They get the gorilla jab. The next thing you know, the humans and the apes are crossing over, and all of a sudden there's an ape called Karen yelling at the Statue of Liberty, going, "Actually, that was my planet. It was my planet."
Okay, you know what? You're all piping. You're all having your little talk about, privilege this, privilege that. You know what I see? I see three men trying to keep a good woman down who's breaking glass ceilings, and I'm not having it.
Naomi,
I think they break a lot of ceilings.
This woman's an ape? That's so rude, Hing.
Well, I mean...
Can I personally say...
Dan, did you say that this woman... Dan, did you say that this ape also had open heart surgery back in the 90s?
Yeah, 1994, she had open heart surgery, which means, she's definitely at risk.
It is crazy to me that apes in the San Diego Zoo have better healthcare than most Americans. That is wild. That is insane.
Yeah, well, she just sits around doing nothing. So she's clearly obese. She's very trapped in a very sedentary position. So it's nice.
She's Batman at Hollywood on the Gold Coast.
Yeah. This week's third fear. Speaking of great apes, Piers Morgan. For those who aren't following closely, as people on the internet are, Piers Morgan, one of Britain's most well-known glazed hams, stormed off the set of ITV's Good Morning Britain program, when a reporter on the panel called him out for being too harsh on Meghan Markle's interview with Oprah Winfrey. Piers said he did not believe a word that the Duchess had said during her interview with Oprah, and then got called out, and Morgan then in turn quit the program entirely. Now, the day after, ITV's shares dropped 3.8%. 8%, or about £200 million. Now, we all know Morgan is carrying a bit of extra weight, but £200 million? Very surprising stuff. Since then, the Duchess has actually filed a formal complaint about Morgan to ITV, which kind of makes me wonder, does she have any weight anymore? Because she's no longer really in the royal family. Naomi, is Morgan being a bit of a sook here for no reason?
Oh, there's a reason. There is a reason. Did you know? I know what the reason is.
What's
He
the
had
reason?
a drink. He had a drink with Meghan Markle years ago, and it was the same. He had a drink with her. I don't know if he thought it was a date, but she then left that drink and went to a party and met Prince Harry that night. Piers Morgan never heard from her again, and he used to say all these things about Meghan, my friend Meghan Markle, and then something turned when she ghosted him, in his words. And so I think that's his years-long campaign to smear her name is just based on a woman rejecting a man, which who's surprised?
Was this a beautiful moment with Schadenfreude for women everywhere, Naomi?
Oh, absolutely. Especially because he was so mad at her for leaving the royal family. And then a guy literally said, she's allowed to not call you back. And he stormed out. And now he's got fired from the show. It's amazing.
Yeah, and also he must get used to that. I assume millions of people have ghosted Piers Morgan over the years.
Right. I mean, you have one drink with him and you're like, well, I'm not going to make that mistake again.
Is it just that normally when people don't return his calls, he hacks their phones?
Do we think he genuinely quit though? Do we think that was all, or do you think the entire thing was orchestrated?
It's hard to know. I asked my UK media source about this, and he reckons Piers Morgan is out of contract at the end of the year, so he probably doesn't care too much, and it could help him renegotiate a deal, or he could use this stunt to get leverage on a sweet new deal with a brand new news channel that's launching in the UK called GB News. Now, have you heard about GB News?
No, but I'm assuming it's right wing.
Okay, well, let's try and figure that out. I'll give you some clues and you can figure this out for me.
Okay.
It's run by the former CEO of Sky News Australia.
Okay.
Oh, what? I'm so surprised.
Angelo Frangopoulos. Now, I'm going to read out a few things that Angelo Frangopoulos has said about GB News, and maybe we can play a game together called, dog whistle.
All right. I'll bark if I hear something.
Exactly. If you can all bark, when you know the answer, I'm going to read out a sentence. The first person to bark can translate that sentence for me. Okay. So can I just test your barks? Lewis, can I get a bark from you? Oh, that's good. Hing, can I get a bark from you? Naomi, can I get a bark from you?
Woo.
Oh, that's good. Excellent. All right.
That's how my dog barks.
Here we go. Here are some things that Angelo Frangopoulos has said about what GB News is going to be. The first sentence: GB News will be staunchly independent.
Okay, so far that could mean anything. All right.
I mean, maybe I'll put it it's going to be pro Brexit, and independent as in immune to criticism.
The next thing he said is, we aim to serve British communities who feel poorly represented by mainstream television media, especially outside of London.
Can I just chime in as a white person and say there's a little spidey part in the back of my brain that says someone is trying to talk to you.
Great. Here's the other thing he said. We are proud to be adding plurality to the UK media market by investing in journalism that will be as diverse and as broad-minded as the British people themselves.
Libertarianism. Did I get it?
Do you want to add something there?
Well, I just wonder. I mean, how diverse are is the British populace in their minds? Because when they say British, they really mean only white Britons. That's who they're speaking to, because that's how they define Britain.
And I think in this case, it's we want to be as broad-minded as not the left-wing media that is currently on the BBC. Here's the final thing he said, and I wonder what he means by it. We are absolutely committed to our mission to report news in the most accurate and balanced way as we can.
Unless it involves climate change or other scientific-based facts.
I feel like we've heard all this before. That's great. Thanks, folks. Now I'm just going to pop a pin in that before we get to Carl. I've got to play one bit of tape. I'm going to reinsert that in after the. Let's talk about the ticket giveaway, the $800,000 ticket.
He's worked in television. He knows how to do a pickup.
Hey, this is a pickup. Yeah. Okay. So here's a great bit of tape that this is Michael McCormack talking about this $800,000. This is Michael McCormack talking about this travel ticket discount. Can you guys figure out what he means by the following?
Now, we're extending, as the Prime Minister has just said, the domestic aviation network support, DANS. We're extending the regional airline network support, RANS. We're also adding the aviation, the tourism aviation network support, TANS. So we've got RANS, we've got DANS, we've got TANS, and I know Virgin and Qantas are going to be big fans of what we're doing today. I know all Australians are going to be big fans of what we're doing today because it's going to get those tourists to their places.
Fearmongers, what does FAN stand for?
Fuckheads. And then whatever the and was, I don't know. I'm sorry, I saw Josh Frydenberg laughing and it made me so mad. I was like, you should never have a smile on your face.
Watching unfunny people laugh at terrible jokes. I mean, it was honestly like watching the recording of a podcast. It was truly humiliating for all of them to be involved with.
It also, have you ever seen that video where Marshall Mathers, aka Eminem, seeks to prove or disprove that nothing rhymes with orange? And he just sits there, he's like, orange. It's got a orange. Because I got that's Michael McCormack right there. Like, it's just a white guy doing unnecessary rhymes to the dismay of everyone around him.
Yeah, he's spitting bars. Who knew McCormack had bars?
Yo, turn my headphones up. Here we go. I'm in.
All right, there we go. Our next guest needs no introduction for our Australian listeners, but for context for everybody else, in 2014, he was listed as Australia's most trusted person by Reader's Digest, only beaten by the Wiggles. He's a national treasure here in Australia and a leader in science communication around the world. And he's the bloke who actually got me into broadcasting. He actually got me in when I was in year 10. I spent a day with him hanging out at the ABC. His name is Dr. Kruszelnicki. He's got a new book about climate change right here, and he joins us now on Irrational Fear. Welcome, Carl.
Ahoy, look, that's the sweetest introduction anybody's given, but really, I only ever got to number 7 on the Australia Most Trusted list. And while I did bounce up and down, overall, the trend was that by the year 2435, I'll be down at 100 on the trusted list, just below Chappelle Corby.
And by then, you will be able to be on Dancing with the Stars, Carl.
I've got to work on it, man.
Carl, it's so great to have you on the podcast again. Returning podcast guest. You did one of our very first shows at the FBI Social a long time ago. You've written a book about climate change, and why write another book about climate change? There's so many of them, Carl. There's so many books about climate change. Don't we all know about climate change?
Well, okay. I wrote my first story on climate change in 1981.
For or against?
Right, and I've been banging on about it ever since. So this book took me a long time to write, and I'll summarise the 15,000 words in 5 sentences. Sentence number 1, we've been doing science on climate change since 1820, and in the 1970s and 80s, the biggest funders of the real science were the fossil fuel companies. But in the year 1990, the scientists said that climate change was real, and in that same year, the fossil fuel companies chucked a U-turn and started denying it. And by 2013, we're spending $1 billion a year denying it. Sentence number 2. Why do you burn fossil fuels? And the answer is because they're so loaded with energy. The energy in 1 barrel of oil, $50, is equal to the energy going flat out that a labourer can deliver at a cost of $500,000 over 10 years.
Wow.
And if you burn over 10 years, you get the labour of a labourer and you save $499,950. If, however, you burn the fossil fuel at the rate of 2 or 3 barrels a minute, you can shift 600 people all the way to London in 21 and a half hours.
Okay, so
Number three.
Carl, no offense, but this is a lot more than 2 sentences already.
You'll notice that I followed the stand technique of no full stop. You're dead right, Dr. Naomi.
how many labourers do we have to burn to power a plane from Sydney to London?
Well, you should remember the following, that without plumbers, you have no civilization.
Oh, we have a comment on the line saying, wait, Dr. Carl is now burning labour? I don't think he means that.
Number three, we've actually, the heat of global warming trapped by the greenhouse gases is 400,000 atom bombs per day. Okay, Naomi, that was a single sentence.
That is
I loved it. I mean, I didn't love it. I'm not happy about it.
No. You can get away
really
with that
happy
for a
about this,
day
Naomi.
or a week or a month, but not a decade or not several decades.
Am I crazy in thinking that 400,000 Hiroshima bombs is quite hot?
Oh, it's a shirt load.
Right.
Luckily, most of the heat, 93% of the heat goes into the ocean. If it did not, the air temperature would be 35 degrees higher, and the average air temperature on Earth would be 55 degrees, and we'd be all dead. And when last year, on the 4th of January, Sydney became the hottest place on Earth with a temperature of, 48.5, call it 50. Instead, it would have been 85 and we'd all be dead.
Right.
The disadvantage is that we're having things happening in the oceans like the Great Barrier Reef and the other reefs bleaching, which never happened before. Fourth thing, besides all the other stuff we've done, we've actually tipped the Earth off its axis by redistributing about 1 billion tonnes of ice every year. Point number 5, we can fix and reverse global warming. The only thing stopping us is the $1 billion a year that the fossil fuel companies are spending. But I have worked out a way to reverse global warming cheaply, which is, and unfortunately this is illegal, we simply bribe the politicians back. Australian politicians are so cheap.
This is the thing.
$5,000, you get anything you want.
And this is something we've discussed on the podcast before. The bribes or the lobbying money that they get is so inconsequential. Like, it's something that we could donate a year's worth of our Patreon to get ourselves a sweet deal.
Great. Another reason I won't get paid for this podcast.
I mean, it's possible. It's possible to do. Like, it's like $6,000 gets
Are
you
you serious?
a return of like hundreds of millions of dollars. Yeah.
The normal return, Naomi, is 1,000 to 1, and if you put in $10,000 to the re-election fund of a liberal of any party, doesn't matter which one, if you put in $10,000, you get 1,000 times back $10 million. You get roughly back 1,000 to 1 if you look at it averaged out over the last 3 decades. That's what you get for donating to a political party. It doesn't matter which one; they're all the same. We need new politicians, and if any of you run for politics, I will vote. Mind you, none of you voted for me in 2007, but even though it was like a knife into my heart, I still accept that. I still love you.
Carl, let me talk about that for a second. To do that, to run for politics, you have to do a number of things. You have to leave the university, leave the ABC. You have to leave a whole bunch of things that gave you secure employment in your life so you can run on a climate change ticket. And you didn't run as number 1 on the ticket. You ran as number 2, and you're the most famous person that you could have run as number 1. Do you ever regret that?
No. The education was fantastic. I pay for my coffee. I pay $10,000 every year for scientific journals to read, and I paid $250,000 for that education.
Wow.
But it was a great education. What I learned from it is that I can turn around and say,
so many politicians.
Yeah.
But now I know that. You see, I didn't know that, Dr. Naomi.
Okay.
Right? Yeah, I learned that by that. And so it was a great education. And so remember that old saying, all that's needed for evil to triumph is that good people do nothing. And so if you say, I'm not going to run for politics, you have immediately left room for the evil people to go in.
What happens if you're already evil and you're considering running for politics? That's my situation.
Well, how evil are you? Do you have a white cat that you stroke?
No, I'm allergic to cats, but I'm not allergic to bribes.
There's a future for you. There's a strong future for you.
As someone who's semi-across Lewis's financial situation right now as well, I imagine the bribes, it'd really tank the market once Lewis entered politics. You know, you're currently paying $6,000 to buy for a politician. The moment Lewis gets in there, it's down to, what, 1/10 of that, you know?
Yeah, I'll take anything. I live a very frivolous lifestyle.
Yeah, in fact, quite conveniently, Lewis would actually do most things for about $300 for some reason. I don't know exactly.
Wow,
Cash.
that's a small sum.
I can tell you the price is slightly higher than that. The price is slightly higher than that. You can get a little bit more than that. Carl, when did you say you wrote your first article about climate change?
1981, and that was after I'd read an article about the world's largest reinsurance company. Now, you know about insurance companies. You go there, here's my bicycle, here's my car, give me some money. If it goes bad, I'll give you some money, roughly 3%, right? And then there's the reinsurance companies. And so if an insurance company's got a whole bunch of insurance policies, say for hail damage in the Wollongong area, they will then go to a reinsurance company and cover that bet. And so the reinsurance companies are the big guy. Munich Re, in 1973, started factoring in climate change into their insurance premiums. Why? The answer comes from where I get all of my wisdom, the movie The Godfather. It's nothing personal, it's just business. They could see in 1973, before the scientists, who needed a higher burden of proof, that climate change, or as they called it then, the greenhouse effect, was causing increased floods and it was costing them money. Nothing personal, they just charge more. Go to any insurance company, they still charge. There was no way around it.
Let me ask you this. Like, you've been covering for 40 years. How do you feel about the trajectory of Australia's climate action over that period? Like, how does it make you feel, kind of constantly thinking you're doing something because you're one of Australia's biggest science communicators, but knowing everything you're doing is going to waste some sort of space, but not really affecting much real change, though you are educating the populace. How do you feel about where we are right now?
The longest journey begins with a single step. I'm still doing that first step. And I'm not that big as a science communicator. Come on, you're too kind. But you've got to keep going and doing it.
This podcast started 9 years ago as a podcast which spoke a lot about climate change. And, it feels disheartening to kind of see where we are now.
Because and here's point number 5 in my book. We can fix and reverse global warming. We have the science and the technologies that we need and what we can develop. There will be further scientific discoveries and technologies that will make it faster. But right now, we can stop emitting gases. We can start the process and be there for electricity within 10 years, for most of transport within 10 years, for planes and ships 15 years, for agriculture about 20 years, industrial processes 10 years. We can do it really quickly. The only thing stopping us is that $1 billion a year that funds so much disinformation and buys politicians.
So
okay, well, I have $10 I can put in.
Run for politics, Dr. Naomi. Run for politics. I'm voting for you.
And we've got 149 Patreon subscribers that are doing the exact same thing. Carl,
you, Dr. Hing, as well, even though you live at home. By the way, is that true that you live at home?
Yes.
Did you know that you are like the majority of American drug dealers?
Yeah, in more ways than one.
They live at home.
If you come out of my house to buy drugs, I will talk to you about my ex-girlfriends as well.
And you mentioned that word plurality.
Yeah.
Early on. I actually came across a new phrase which I have to share with you. You ready for it?
In reference to GB News.
Yeah, GB News. Now, I learned this word the other day from somebody who knows English grammar, a person who is French, because we Australians don't know grammar. And she taught me this phrase, pluralis tantum, which is a noun that can exist only in the plural, such as leftovers. You can use it as an adjective. I left over some food, but you don't go to the fridge and get the leftover. You get the leftovers, and you walk out of town with your belongings, not belonging. This is totally irrelevant, but I thought I had to share it with you because you use the word plurality.
What about pants? Is that one? Or is
pants
that just one?
You can't have a single pant. And
you can't have a single pant.
It's always scissors. Pluralia tantum. Always plural.
Carl, that's a different podcast.
Yeah. That's one for grammar nerds and hypothetical Harry Potter spells.
Yeah. The difference between those podcasts and our podcast is that those podcasts are really successful.
They're darling.
when you go setting about to write this book, like it's not a huge book on climate change. It's a very accessible book on climate change, as is a lot of your work. What are the biggest challenges in creating something so small to have such a big impact?
Writing it. It took me longer to write than a big book, and it puts me in mind of that famous letter by Oscar Wilde from Reading Jail when he started off with, "Dear Mr. Ilic, I'm awfully sorry that I'm sending you such a long letter, because I didn't have time to write a short one."
Yeah.
It took me so much longer to write a 15,000 word book than 50. You can read in one arvo.
And do you think you're going to make $1 bazillion on this one? Is this one going to put a new solar panel on your roof?
I've made it so far. I have made a loss of $4,000 because that's what it cost me to pay people to do the fact checking. Because I strongly believe that the labourer is worthy of their hire, and nobody should do anything for nothing. And so I paid him $50 an hour, and it worked out to $4,000.
Oh, the price is a barrel of oil.
Oh,
Lewis, how do you feel about Carl's statement there that people shouldn't do things for nothing, given that...
Well, I'll tell you a weird thing, right? This is one thing I learned as a doctor. You ready for it?
Yeah.
Most people never know when they have enough, and in fact, it even extends until they die. Because as a doctor,
blood? Are you talking about blood?
I was talking about enough, and I've got enough. I don't need to make money out of this book. I own my own house. I don't have any debts. I've got enough.
You do now.
I've got enough. I don't need to make money out of this book. I just need to get the message out.
Dr. Karl, as I've mentioned earlier, you are one of Australia's top boomers, and we are so happy.
You know the word boomer refers to a nuclear submarine loaded with nuclear weapons?
Really? I had no idea about this.
Yeah, well, the Trident missile carrier class, they can carry, I think it's 284 nuclear weapons, each of which can be aimed at a separate city. And so the Trident-class nuclear submarines are the most powerful weapons ever invented by the human race. And in the trade, the submariners, they call them boomers, because when they do their job, there's one hell of a loud boom. Luckily, they've never done their job.
Does that hurt your feelings, Dr. Karl?
Which bit of what?
The fact that that's what people call you?
A boomer?
Yeah.
He's the most
and that's what makes him a cool boomer.
Hey, man, I've got a TikTok account, man. I'm cool.
Yeah, hell yeah.
This is all because Dr. Karl was taking the piss out of Naomi before we started the show.
Yeah.
I was just trying
Get in.
Naomi, this is a wonderful thing you're doing.
Back at Dr. Karl right now.
Yeah, he attacks me, and he does it when no one's recording, and then he makes me look like a bitch. I see what you're doing.
Karl, thank you so much for joining us on Irrational Fear. If there's one thing you want people to take away from your book and climate change, what is it?
We can fix and reverse climate change, and it won't be more expensive. Rather, in the long term, it'll be cheaper.
I think that is something that we've spoken about so much on this podcast, Karl, that it just is so frustrating to hear you say it in such clean language, because it feels like no one's listening. Karl, thank you so much. Please, next time you want to invest money on fact checkers, could you please buy a politician instead?
You have got great wisdom there, Grasshopper.
That's it for Irrational Fear. Big thank you to all of our guests, Naomi Higgins, Michael Hing, Dr. Karl, Lewis Hobba. Do you folks have anything to plug? Naomi, do you got anything to plug?
Yes, my television show. Please watch it on ABC iView. For any international listeners, it's going to be on Netflix soon. So get on all episodes up now. You can binge it. Andrew Bolt I don't even think he liked it, but he still complained. So you know it's good.
Michael Hing, do you have anything you want to complain not to complain about?
Do you have any complaints?
I have several complaints, but I will forego my complaints in order to plug something, Dan, if that's all right with you. I'm going to be at the Melbourne International Comedy Festival from the 24th.
Really great to have you here. I'm so glad we've just run out of time. We can't plug anything more. Real shame. Lewis, Hobba, do you have anything to plug? Sorry, no. Go ahead. You plug your show.
Yeah, I'm doing a stand-up comedy show. It's called Kill Hing in the Name of. It is at the Melbourne International Comedy Festival from the 24th of March until the 5th of April. I'll also be doing the Sydney Comedy Festival after that. It's a brand new hour of stand-up comedy. It's all about real funny stuff like having too many therapists and having a lobster suit that you can't get rid of and a low-level death threat. It's classic comedy areas, guys. Get along.
Relatable.
Yeah, very relatable.
Lewis, Hobba, do you have anything to plug?
Yes. One show only. Melbourne. Last year, they said we couldn't do it. I predicted it. Dan was out there going Irrational Fear in 2020. I was like, you're an idiot. Coronavirus. This thing's going to get cancelled. What happened? 24 hours later, they cancelled it. I'm Nostradamus. What do I predict this time? An absolute bonfire of comedy on Sunday the 11th at a time. I've just found out about this an hour ago, guys. I'm trying to do the best I can. Come see Irrational Fear.
Dr. Carl, do you want to plug anything? Do you want to plug your book?
Run for politics, people. And the other thing you can do is shift your money, if you have any, away from fossil fuels. We're going to win. Just speed it up.
That's Dr. Carl's little book of climate change science. I've spoken to Katan Joshi, noted Twitterer and energy wonk. That's coming out in the Greatest Moral Podcast of our generation on Monday. So stay tuned for that one. It'll be in your Irrational Fear feeds. Big thanks to Road Mikes, the Bertha Foundation, our Patreon supporters, post-producer Jacob Brown on the Teppanyaki timeline. This episode of Irrational Fear had contributions from behind the scenes by Kate Holdsworth, Maddie Palmer, Killian David, Ads, Kieran, and a few more on the Discord crew. Until next week, there's always something to be scared of. Good night.
Bye.
Thank you. Oh, and Carl, I'm wearing your microsleep shirt, and thank you. I've still got it. It sits in my wardrobe.
Oh, you're doing God's work, and I'm sure she would approve.
Thanks, Carl. Thanks, everyone. That was a wonderful show.
Now, are we off air, are we?
We're still on air, but do you want to say something?
Yeah, okay. So, Naomi, notice that Dan and Lewis and Mr. Hing and I are all talking close to our microphones. Now, listen to my voice. I'm going to introduce something called the proximity effect. Listen to the warmth in my voice increase, and here it comes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. See how much warmer it gets when I get close? Now, you've got a really engaging manner. Your content is fabulous. You're really smart, but you sound boxy and thin, and we're not getting the warmth in your voice.
Oh, Naomi, you said you sounded thin.
Oh my God, yes, Queen.
No, just try it. Count to 10 as you move your mouth closer to the microphone.
This is making me itchy. I need to leave.
I'm going to go
so
as well.
For having me,
Thanks.
guys.
See you later.
Does this make you happy, Dr. Carl?
No, just try it and listen to what you hear. So
I can't hear myself.
Bye.
Bye. Great to see you, Naomi.
You're a lot warmer. You're a lot warmer.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Carl.
I'm just trying to help you. I know you don't need it, but you're so wonderful. You just need to be more wonderful.
Bye, Carl.
Thank you.
Oh, Naomi, I'm really sorry about that. Carl's back.
I never went.
Carl, thank you so much. That was great.
Sorry, but I just don't want Naomi to be held back by people saying she's got a thin voice. I'm switching off my thing, and I'll drop box the file to you shortly.
Oh, really? What are you dropping off?
You wanted me to Dropbox my audio file to you.
Oh, yeah, that'll be great. Yeah, perfect. Thanks,
Will
Carl.
do. Okay, see you later.
That was my.
You use this as a podcast when you edit it for my shirtloads of science. Or
Yeah,
think about it. Feel very free to say no, because I don't want to force anything you're doing.
I'll give you the full show, and you can use whatever you want out of it, from top to tail.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll Dropbox it to you right now. See you soon. Bye.
Bye.
And